This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video.
Dispatch War Rocket Ajax to bring me back his body.
Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Engine's Chair. This episode we're going to continue with the Flash Gordon 1980 War Rocket Ajax build. And a lot of you reached out. I appreciate all the comments and feedback I've gotten from the first episode and other things I've posted as far as updates. A lot of love for this movie, even more than I expected. A lot of people just like myself that remember watching this movie as a kid and grew up with it. And it really, if you take it for what it's worth, it is an entertaining movie. So if you haven't seen it, please go out and check it out. It's worth giving it a shot. Anyway, we are here to build the War Rocket Ajax. We're going to make some good progress on this video. I don't usually even get into doing any lighting on models this early in the build, but we're going to talk about some lighting, some Arduino code, and a couple other things. So give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, so starting to work on putting this together. The first part that I assembled was this engine piece here. And I showed this last episode. There's a ring inside of here that lines these two parts up. What I did was I glued it to this part first using CA glue. And I test fitted it and found there was a bit of a gap here. So what I did was I took this piece, put that ring on the piece of sandpaper and sanded it and kept test fitting it until I got this as flush as possible. I think what I'm going to do is edit that piece and post it in the notes below. So check the notes below. Probably take about 2 millimeters off of that, and it should be, because there's plenty of extra material. You don't need it to be that thick to work for lining these up. And that should let these two pieces sit flush together, as flush as they're going to get. So I'm going to take about 2 millimeters off that part, and I'll post that part down below in case you don't have that ability and you don't want to go through trouble having to try to sand it and that. But I've got these two pieces glued together now. Well, 3 pieces if you include the ring in the middle. And what I've worked on, as you can see here, I've got a little bit of little bit of putty in here. And let me hold this a little closer and focus so you can see it better. But you can see that putty in there. And what I did was I used this perfect plastic putty. I used 3 different kinds of putty. And let me see if I can get them all out here, just to kind of explain what I use these different putties for. So here's a full tube of the Perfect Plastic Putty. I've almost used this one, so I've got a full tube waiting to be used. And these are pretty much the 3 different kinds of putties I use. I showed you before this half here. I already threw the other half away because I don't need the whole thing. This is going to be this and the wing are going to be test pieces for testing out my paint that I want to use to see what kind of color scheme I want to use on this. But if I had to glue those 2 halves together, there would be a pretty decent gap there. And when I get decent sized gaps on there, I like to use this Bondo glazing and spot putty to fill decent sized gaps. So I use that for parts that have I don't know how to give an exact measurement. I just look at it and kind of have an idea of what I want to, when I want to use this, depending on how big the gap is. But for wider gaps, I use this to fill those. For normal size gaps, like when a part's fitting together real nice. Now, if this part didn't have all these little crevices in it, I probably would have used my Tamiya white putty because this does a great job of bonding to the part and not having a lot of problems with it. It sands real good once it's dry. But the thing with this part is because you've got all these little nooks and crannies, these little pieces, little parts in here where it's got to get in. I like to use my Perfect Plastic Putty, and I almost exclusively use this to thin it out because it thins out so well with water. And what you can do is I keep a little bottle here and make a little slurry out of it. And I kind of learned this from Boyd over at TrekWorks because he does this. And I don't know if he learned it from somebody else, but I learned it from Boyd. And it works really well for filling in spots where you don't really want to do a lot of sanding. And that's the case with this because this would be really hard to sand the seam here with all these little depressions in here. So what I did was I keep a little bottle here, and you got to kind of keep it mixed up. But I keep a little bottle here that's got kind of a slurry in it. And depending on the application, you might want this a little thinner or thicker. I usually find that if you take 10 parts of the plastic putty and maybe 2 parts of water, usually is pretty good, maybe 3 at the most. It really doesn't take a lot to thin this stuff out enough. And this comes, I use this needle applicator because it makes it real easy to put it. Now sometimes this does get blocked up, and really all it takes is, where did I put it at? I had a resistor sitting here that I was using, but I'll find it in a minute. But just take the end of a resistor, and I push it down in this tube just like this one here. And usually that unclogs it for me if it does dry and get clogged in there. So that way I can use this. But what I do is I take this and I just run a bead around here. And you can see I've already gone around this once. But depending on your gap, some of this is going to soak in. So all you do is come around again. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 passes to really get this to fill in. But I'll just go around this. And now that most of it's filled in, most of this should sit on top. Some of it will probably seep in again. Like I said, you may have to do a 3rd pass, depending on how thick or thin you make this as well. But I like using this stuff because I can get it to run into these spots. And once it dries and I'm happy with the fill on it, that it's filled everything properly, I can come back with a wet Q-tip and get into this real well and remove this and sand, or not sand, but smooth out this Perfect Plastic Putty just using a wet Q-tip. So that's why I like using this stuff. But you can see how easy it is to just go around and kind of fill it in. So that's all filled in. I'll let that dry. If I need to do another round of that, I will. But once it's all nice and dry and I like how it's filled in, like I said, I'll just take a Q-tip and I'll wet it with some water, and I'll come around and I'll go in and I'll just work this out until I get whatever excess putty I need to off of there, and then you'll have a nice filled seam there without having to try to do a lot of sanding, which, like I said, would be kind of hard to do in this situation with all these little depressions in here. So that's how I'm doing that. Other than that, the only other thing I need to mention is on this piece. Now I printed this up. I've been working to smooth it. I'm doing it in sections. I'm trying to get this part here kind of decently smooth, and then I'll move on to this part. And I do it in kind of quadrants. So I'll do this quarter first, this quarter, this will be another quarter, although this part in here I don't really have to worry too much about. This is going to be covered up by the wing. The wing is going to go in there, and then you got some other pieces that are going to go in here. So this part in here I really don't have to worry about sanding too much because it's not going to be visible. But I do need to get this part here sanded and this part here sanded. So I've kind of cut it up into quarters for the most part, or halves, depending on how you want to look at it, because I'll get this smooth, and then I'll get this underside, and that front half will be nice and smooth, and then I'll work on this back half. But one issue I've run into is when I went to test fit these parts is this does not fit. It doesn't fit this. This piece here is too thick. And I didn't modify this part. And this is the back, because when you look at the instructions, this part, this shape here pretty much is like an arrow, and it points to the back. It points backward. So I'm going to have to, I don't want to reprint this, so I'm going to have to modify it. And I think the easiest thing for me to do is just going to be to take my Dremel and Dremel this lip off here, because it's just too thin. See how thin this gap is here and how thick that is there. It's just this part is just too thick to fit in this gap. So what I'm going to do is Dremel this lip off here and probably have to take it down a little bit, but that'll still allow, this part will fit, looks like it'll fit perfect, and then this part down here will still lock in. So I can afford to take this off. But what I'm going to do is, got a little bit of plastic putty on my hand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, and this is why I said last episode, I don't want to post these parts that I've modified to. I'm sure I don't have to make any more modifications, because what I'll do is I'll modify this part. So when I do post this, that modification will be done to this, so this should fit, because if you look at this end where I did modify it, this actually fits on that end, but this is the front, so that doesn't do me any good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the back end just the way I did on the front here, and you'll see that part will line up perfectly. So I'll do the same modification on this end, and that way that'll fix that problem. I'm not sure why that's like that, though, that these two parts are not fitting. So but I'll get that straight, and it'll be good to go when that part, when I make that part available for download, so that way you won't have to worry about modifying it. But I'm going to work on finishing or doing some more sanding on this, getting this smoothed out. I'm getting ready to reprint this wing. I found that it will actually fit on my Photon Mono X. I'll have to print it this way, which really is an idea, but it'll do until I can get my M3 Max fixed. That's just what I might have to do for now. So I'm going to print it like this because I really want to print one piece. I could easily split it and print it, but then I've got two separate halves, and this is really meant, I think, to be kind of a unifying piece. Although on the one piece print, it's not really unifying anything because this is all one piece already. But if you had to split this, if you did either of the splits, this would help kind of bring all those parts together because you've got the screw holes here. But like I said, on this, I'm not too worried about it. So I could split this and print it. I'll think about it and see. I'd rather print it this way rather than this way on my printer, but this is the only way I can get it to fit on my Photon Mono X. So I'll take a look at that, but I'm going to get that printed up. I'm going to let this dry, and then I will come back and show you how I go around with a Q-tip and kind of clean this up. And hopefully I've got this pretty close to being done sanded. So give me a little bit to work on stuff, and we will come back and take a look. Alright, so I've been working on cleaning this up, and turn this overhead light on. Maybe I should be able to see something. I've been working on getting this cleaned up, and you see how that looks compared to this side here, which I still got to work on this a little bit here yet. Took about 3 or 4 passes and finally got it filled in to where I was happy with it. But basically what I'm doing now is just coming in with a Q-tip, and got a little cup of water here, and I'm just dabbing some water on and rubbing off any of this excess I can get off. And I'll let this get kind of soaked in a little bit on the area I'm working on, and just work on a little bit at a time. I've only got this little bit left now, but you don't want to get the whole thing wetted down yet, because you're going to want to come back in and And what I do is I come in with my knife and just kind of outline or trace the shape here that these little indents and these raised areas are making. And I just kind of trace around it with my flat blade facing towards the seam. You don't want to come at it this way into the seam because you'll dig into the seam that way. But if you come at it at an angle, you can kind of come in and remove some of this excess without gouging into the seam. And what that'll let you do is kind of, when you get done and get it nice and cleaned up, you'll have a nice tight outline of the depressed areas here around the ring that you want to kind of clean up. And once I get that done, get some of this removed. You want to wet it a little bit because if you try to do this while it's dry, you end up pulling out larger chunks of the putty, and you don't want to do that. So just kind of wet it down a bit and let it soak in a little bit, and then this tends to kind of peel off more instead of coming out in chunks. And if I do come in and take out too much in one spot, I can always come back in and fill it back in and redo it. But so far it's worked out pretty well. I haven't had too many problems with that. A lot of times when I accidentally do pull out a little chunk, I can take it and put it back in place, and because it's moistened, I can get it to go back where it came out of, and then try and reform it without having to wait for it to dry all over again. But I'll get the area cleaned out a bit. Like I said, I'll come back in with a little more water on this Q-tip, and just keep working my way around until I get done with it. And once I'm happy with the seam, I'll be ready to let it dry real good, and then come in with some primer, and we'll see how it looks. So I'm going to continue to work on this. I've got the wings that I made some changes to, revisions to. I've got those printing now, and when we come back, we'll be able to take a look at that. So give me a little bit to keep working on this, because I know you don't want to sit here and watch me do this, and we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, so I pretty much got this worked out and got it cleaned up all the way around. So I'm gonna let that set up and dry. It's got to dry again since I re-moistened it, and I'll let that dry, put a coat of primer on it, and we'll take a look back at that. Now we do have this one part here that has to go on the back. I'm still having a little bit of a debate with it. On the studio model in the movie, all you see is this center one lit up, and it just does this pulsing light. That's all it does. Now this is made so that you could take a bunch of 3mm bulbs and they'll fit perfectly in here to light up this outer ring. I don't know if I'm gonna light that up yet or not. It's a lot of LEDs to use for an effect that doesn't appear on the studio model, so it's up to you. You can do that, and my thought is if I did it, I'd just have that middle one pulsing, and then probably have this outside ring activated by a switch, and maybe have that pulsing as well when it's on. But I don't know. I'm still debating whether or not I want to do that, so I haven't glued this piece in yet, and I'm not in too big of a hurry to glue it in yet because I've got a little bit of time before I need to get to that point. I did modify. You can see that I did remove some material so that this would fit where it needs to fit on the model here. If I can get these lined up. And there we go. It just fits right into place. And it's all centered up, and you don't have to worry about guessing where it's centered at on the main part here. The main hull is coming along. It's this is my first major print using my FDM printer. I started out with resin, and I love resin. I do have an FDM printer just for some other projects where I think FDM is a little more appropriate to use just for strength purposes. Pound for pound, it's probably stronger. I don't think this hull is any stronger as an FDM print I think I've only got this at 30% infill, I think is what I used on this. It's way lighter. It's also probably going to be easier to break than, say, the resin print that I did here, because this is solid resin. I didn't hollow this any, other than obviously what's open because of the way the model is. It's fairly open anyway. I mean, if you look down, you can see it. There's not a whole lot of resin to fill in and waste on this, other than where it bulks out here at the front or the back, depending on which end you're looking at. But so as a resin print, if this would have fit on my M3 Max, I would have loved to just printed this in resin, because I really hate sanding FDM, because FDM does not sand as well as resin does. Resin sands really easy, especially if you take it after you've first made the part in resin, and it's kind of slightly, I don't want to say soft, but you know, it's not quite as hard as it is once you do that final curing on it. You can sand it and get it nice and smooth, and then do that final cure on it, and it's real easy to work with. Versus FDM, my experience with this FDM so far has just been a pain. I used my belt sander to cheat a little bit, which worked out great, except there was one little spot up here at the front, and you can't really see it much. You can make it out a little bit still. I got some more work to do there yet, where it actually started to cause the PLA to melt and soften up again. So you got to be careful if you do that. If you use a belt sand or anything else to kind of speed things along, that you don't stay in one spot too long, because it will start to cause that stuff to start remelting. But anyway, I was able to fix that. I patched it with my Bondo, and I'm working on sanding that and getting it smooth again. I will tell you, I've been working on this a while. I've done quite a few passes of sanding and priming, and I'll tell you, this stuff here, this Rust-Oleum Ultimate Primer 2-in-1 filler and sandable, is a lifesaver. This is going to be your best friend, as far as I'm concerned, just from my novice experience with working with FDM. That stuff has been great for kind of helping to smooth this out and fill some of the imperfections. And it's really started to make progress when I started using that for my primer coats, and then coming back and sanding, seeing where it's at, reapplying. A couple times I've reapplied. There's a couple little spots on here now where I'm going to put a little bit of Bondo into it and let it set up, and come back and re-sand it, because it's too pitted to where it would take me forever just doing sanding and priming to get it to smooth out, if ever. So there's a couple little spots here, and a couple of spots along the top edge here, and this side looks pretty good. Spot right there I'll probably fill, and a little bit right here along the top I'll fill with some Bondo and let it set up. Come back, sand it, do another coat of primer, see where I'm at. But it's getting close. It's coming along. Right now I've got I have the front end, the top part where the windows are going to be, printing on my resin printer. I'm going to reprint this in resin as well. I wish I couldn't fit it on the printer, because right now I'm printing the top part of these wings, the top halves of these wings, and I've got the bottom part, or the top part, where the windows go on this printing, and it just took up all the space on my my Photon Mono X. So once I get that done, I'm going to reprint this, because I really don't want to mess with. There's a lot of uneven, you can see there, a lot of faces to this part. Again, I don't know if it was low poly or if this was upscaled from a lower resolution model or what, but I'm really not trying to deal with that with this FDM part. So I'm going to reprint this bottom part in resin as well, and just make the main body the only FDM part on this model. Everything else is going to be resin at this point, because it's small enough that I can print it on my Mono X. So I've got that set up. That's all printing. I did want to show, now that I've got these printed up, the wings here where I redid them. So this is the one piece I printed. This is the model as it comes when you download it. And I just wanted to show a couple of the modifications I made to this. For one thing, starting here in the front, you can see that I added one more opening there that I talked about. And that's just because I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's 8 on the studio model. I'm good with 7. That's fine. And I also added the opening for these lights on the front, which you can see are not on the model as it comes to you. So what I've got is I've got this set up, and you can take a 3mm, and I've got a big enough hole on the inside here to where you can slide the 3mm LED in there. This is a warm white LED. And let me see if I can get a battery hooked up to this to show you. But there we go. You can see how that's going to light up. And that's going to work real well. Got to put some micro crystal clear or something in there as a lens, and that'll kind of help even that out, because right now it's not evened out. But it'll even out once I get some more work done on it. But that's going to look real nice lit up, especially once I get the painting done. You can see I added a trough here for your wiring to come out to this tip, because on the stock part there wasn't any room for you to put lighting. So I opened this tip up because there is kind of marker lights, navigation lights, I don't know what you want to call them, marker lights, anti-collision lights, whatever you want to call them, that go here. And these actually are chaser lights. There's like 3 lights in here that chase, and then this back one lights up as well. So what I'm going to do is set up, use some SMDs to set that up. I've got already got I can't remember the name of it. I already got a chip set up for it, to where I've got that chaser sequence set up in the chip, so I can wire this in and it'll do that chaser. Like I said, I think it may be 4 lights, but I'm only going to be able to fit 3 in here, and then the 4th one at the back. So I'm not going to miss that 1 light. That's fine. And then this backlight will light up at the same time as this light. There's also, I opened this up back here. You can see I put a little trench in here for wiring. There's also supposed to be kind of a strobe light here as well that blinks. So that's my plan for that part. I'm going to get that set up. I opened these openings up for the laser cannons as well, just because it was a really small hole, and I plan to use SMDs in my cannons instead of fiber optics. So I opened these up a little more just to make it easier to run the wiring. Of course, the cannons got to be attached yet. They'll stick out a lot more than that. But so that's that part pretty much. The only other thing I did was, you'll notice I curved these dividers in here on the part as it comes. When you download it, they're straight, but if you look at the studio model in the film, got a little more resin to get off there yet. They're curved, so you can see I added that curve to it, which I like because it kind of gives it almost kind of a, I guess, shark-like, fish-like gill look to it. So I did that as well. So those are the modifications I made to both the wings. I did that to both sides. You can see this side I started to primer it. I've got some more work to do. You can still see some scratches on it from sanding. So I'll have to come back over that with a finer grit sandpaper to get rid of those scratches. And this will be covered up by the upper part of the wing that I've got printing now. And once I get that, I'll be able to kind of match those up and see how it's going to look put together. But that's pretty much it so far. That's where I'm at on modifications and what I printed. Still a lot of modifications probably to come. Definitely a lot more parts I got to print yet. But like I said, I will put these parts out. I'll put the link up for these in the notes below once I'm sure I want to make any more modifications to them. These 2 parts here will just glue together. I was looking to make pins that would just go in between these, but for some reason Tinkercad will not load both halves of this, and I'm not sure why, because it will load this entire wing. That's how I modified this wing. So I'll have to see if I can figure out how to get these 2 halves to load, so that way I can kind of make a pin in there, so that way when you go to put these together, you have pins that kind of line everything up for you, and also adds a little bit of rigidity to it when you glue these together. That way you got some pins holding everything together, not just the glued seam. But I'll keep working on that and see if I can get that figured out. But that's where I'm at now. So I'm going to keep working on this, and we'll come back and take a look. Alright guys, so I'm working on the lighting on the wings, and I'm using one wing as a test piece to see how I want to work this. Now I ran out of my warm white SMDs. I want to use all warm white lighting on this model because I just think warm whiting with it just gives it kind of a classic look. And with this model being largely gold tones, I just think the warm whiting is going to lend itself to enhancing that. So I've got some warm white SMDs. I only had 4 left, so I had to order some more, but I've got enough to kind of test out. The wingtip lighting on this, if you look at the introduction to this, I show some of the video segments from the movie, and there's one where the war rocket is kind of rotating towards the Hawkmen. And if you notice on the outside edge of this wing, this light, this kind of marker light, is kind of a chaser effect. It doesn't just blink on and off. It's got kind of a chaser effect to it. So I'm going to try and duplicate that here. And what I've done is where I've got this, and this is a modification I've already made to this wing, and this will be part of the free modified piece that I'll put links to as soon as I'm sure I don't need to modify it anymore. I've already got to re-up this modification because originally I had a tab on the corner here and realized that that's just not going to work, so I took that tab off. So I'm still got modifications I'm making to these. I think this is pretty much straight, otherwise I wouldn't waste 4 of my SMDs getting these kind of situated doing this, but I'm pretty sure I'm pretty much done with the modifications on this. But what you can see here, if I can focus this properly, is I've got 4 SMDs on there. Let me see if I can focus this a little bit more. There we go. And you can see those 4 SMDs, and they are going to simulate that chaser effect, hopefully. And I've got those running out and kind of wired in a specific way, and I'll go over that more here in a minute. But basically going to have that, and then this really thin piece. I'm just going to say, if you print this, be really careful when you're moving, really careful when you're removing your supports if you do this resin. You can see I broke it, kind of cracked it in the middle here, which is fine because once I get this glued in place, this is basically like a veneer almost that goes over the top of the wing here, and it's going to cover up those wires for me, which works out great. But once I get that glued in place, I can go ahead and putty and sand this as I need to fix that. So I'm not too worried about it. It's no big deal. But you can see that part's going to come down and kind of sandwich on top of that opening. And I've got a little piece, a clear piece, which again I'll make available, that I made to kind of go in that corner. And it's just going to kind of fit in that corner like that and fit that gap. And focus again. I wish I could depend on my autofocus, but it just doesn't do very well. So you can see there that piece is just going to kind of fill that opening there where all those SMDs are. Now I've got to test this out yet and see if that chaser effect is going to be visible through this piece. This is the Anycubic high clear resin. It works really well. But one thing that they say is after you cure it and wash it, before you do the final, well, not cure it, but after you print it and wash it, before you do the final curing, you're supposed to put another coating of the high clear resin on here and then cure it. And that's supposed to make this, it does, well, not supposed to, I've done it, so I know it does it. And that makes these pieces like really ultra clear. So I'm going to see if I need to do that with this piece. I'll probably do it anyway once I get this situated. But again, that's a piece that'll be available for download for those that are interested in it. But what I'm working on now is I've got the wiring kind of situated. And the way what's going to handle that chaser effect is I programmed, I've got 2 of them here. I've got programmed an AT Tiny with a chaser effect that I got from I think it's Hazy Tech or something like that. They've got a YouTube channel. I'll put the links for it down below. That way, if you're interested in doing the same thing or something similar, you can go and look at that. It goes into the different chaser effects. There's like 6 different chaser effects that you can program into this. And basically, it goes over the instructions of how to do that. And there's also a separate video that goes into programming an AT Tiny using an Uno if you haven't done it before. an Arduino Uno if you haven't done it before. So all those instructions, I'll put the link for the main video below my video, just kind of link to it, and then from that video you can kind of go down in the bottom of their description and link to their other videos how to do everything. So that being said, I've got this wired up, I've got my ATtinies programmed, and I've got these IC sockets, integrated circuit socket. Well, I've got one here, but I've got a whole bunch of them. And what that lets me do is solder wires directly to the pins on this and not worry about damaging or overheating the ATtiny. So what I'll do is get all these wires soldered onto this, and then once I've got all the soldering done, I can insert my ATtiny into this. Also, what that lets me do is I can mount this. This will be an open access panel on the bottom here. I'll probably mount this in here somewhere. That way, if the chip ever becomes damaged, or let's say I want to change the coding to the lighting on this, I can pull that chip out without having to do anything major, reprogram it, and then reinsert it, or put a new chip in if I need to put a new chip in because something happened to the other chip. It burned out or got damaged or something. So these are great to have. These are IC sockets. I think these are 8-pin. Yeah, 8-pin IC sockets. That's what I've got for this, for the ATtiny chips. Now, I went over this in my refit build, or not refit, but my Enterprise A build, my Ian Lawrence tribute build that I'm doing. But I'm going to go over it here just in case there's some people that aren't interested in that build and maybe you didn't see it and you're interested in this build and you want to see how I'm doing this. This is a buck converter, BUCK converter. And I like using these when I need to reduce the voltage for a certain circuit, but I only want to have to run 1 voltage into the model. So in this case, I'm going to be running 12 volts into this model, but the ATtiny can't handle 12 volts. You got to do, I got to look, I think it's 4.5, maybe 5 volts I think you can run this on. But you definitely don't want to run this on 12 volts. So what I do is I use a buck converter to bring the circuit down, or the voltage down for that circuit that's going to run into the ATtiny. And what this does is lets me run 12 volts into one side, and then I'll have the 4.5 volts coming out the other side. So that's what I'm doing with this. And you can get these in different versions. I ordered like a 10-pack of these that was really cheap. But you can get them, and they've got a built-in digital screen. They're a little more expensive, the ones that have the digital screen to show you what the voltage is. But I've got a voltage tester. So all I do is I take the voltage tester, and once I plug this in, you'll see the light come on the board. Let me get this mouse out the way. And you see that red light come on. If you can see it in the camera, it might be a little washed out because of all the light in here, but there's a red light right there. I think you can see it now. That lets you know that there's power to the board. Now right now there's 12 volts running into here. I can use my voltage tester, and I can test this. Yep, get it on there. And it's jumping around a lot because I can't keep this thing still on here, but 11.77 volts, 11.76 volts, so pretty much 12 volts right there coming out. And what I need to do is get this down to 4.5 volts. And what you have is you have a little screw here that you use a small screwdriver, and you turn it to adjust those settings. Now I'm going to try to do this. Usually I don't solder wires to this, and there's 2 little holes here that let me just kind of stick these in there and hold it. But if you watch the digital readout, you'll notice that when I turn this, and I'm trying to remember which way this has to go, maybe it's clockwise, but there's quite a bit of turning you got to do to this. Nope, going the wrong direction. And this is a little challenging to do when I don't have those 2 open holes I can just stick this in. So we're going to go counterclockwise, and you see that voltage dropping on there. And these screws are very sensitive once you get down below 9 volts, I think. It kind of picks up speed as far as how quickly the voltage drops on these. But until you get down there, you got to do quite a bit of turning on these. 10 volts. There we go. Now we're down below 9. See, now it's going to jump down real quick. That went too far. That's what I mean. Once you get down, it'll drop too much. So we're going to take this up to 4, right around 4.5 volts. There we go, 4.5 volts. So that's what I'm going to run this at. Give me a couple minutes. I am going to now get this chip hooked up. I'm going to get the wiring hooked up, and we'll take a look at this chaser effect and see if it's going to work. So give me a couple minutes and we'll come back. Alright, so I've got this temporarily wired together. You can see I've got my electrical tape just kind of holding all the wires together right now. Got my buck converter, power coming in from the 12 volt jack. Buck converter, reduce. Now, by the way, too, I did look it up. You can run these AT Tiny 85s up to 5.5 volts. I don't need that much voltage. I'm only using it to run these strobes. I'll put another one here that's going to blink, and then obviously on the other side of the wing. I don't need a whole lot of voltage to run those little SMDs. So 4.5 should be plenty of voltage for this. If I see any problems with it, I can always raise it up easily with the buck converter. But I think that should be good enough. But I've got this wired up. You can see I've got my AT Tiny controller right here. And let me plug this in and let's take a look. And there we go. Already you can see, because I haven't done any light blocking yet, that it's got that chaser effect on the corner there. Let's see if I can get this wing lined up temporarily. But there we go. You can see how that's going to look. Might want to go in and slow the speed down. That might be too far to focus. Slow the speed down just a little bit. And I know it's a little bit washed out in the camera. I mean, you can make out the chaser effect. It's a lot more prominent in person than on camera, because the camera tends to wash it out a little bit and you don't see the individual lights as much in the camera. But yeah, I think that'll work. It looks pretty good to me. If anything, I might have made this a little bit longer, but I've only got the 4 SMDs to work with on here. I could use a different sketch and put in more lights, but I think that gives the effect I'm looking for, and I'm happy with that. So that's what we're going to go with. But what I'll do is the same SMD in the back here, the same connection on here that is, will also be the connection for this one over here, because these should blink at the same time. But that'll work. That's what I was looking for, was to get that chaser effect in. And like I said, maybe if anything, I'll go into the programming and slow it down just a little bit. But yeah, that'll work. So that looks good. I can finish running my other lights. I've got to install the warm white 3mm that is going to power these 2 spotlights in the front here. I don't know, these are really spotlights, but the 2 lights in the front here. And then I've also got to install red. I believe I got to double check. I'm pretty sure they were red lasers that came out of these. So I'll use red SMDs for these as well. But I'll get all that together. But now that I've got this side kind of wired up and figured out, I know how to do the other side. And that's going to look even better once I get this light blocked. And then on this corner here, I will probably mask this off lengthwise, and then mask off and open in the back and paint this corner, light block this corner, so that way you get to separate, because there's supposed to be a bit of a separation between the chaser lights and then this one that just blinks by itself back here. So I'm going to look at doing that when I get to that stage. I've got a couple other things to work out, but that's where I'm at on that. I did print up some clear window insert for this, and once I get that, finish working on that and get it finalized, we'll take a look at how that's turning out and see if that's going to work or not. If that doesn't work, the backup is to start cutting pieces of plastic out of soda bottles, but hopefully that one piece clear insert is going to work. But we'll take a look at that when it's ready. So I'm going to do some more work here. I've just about got this worked out to where it's nice and smooth. There's a couple more spots to work on. And then I want to go to a finer grit sandpaper for the final run over it. So I'm going to do some more work on this too, and hopefully we'll have that about ready to go. And we can see what's up next. So give me a little bit and we'll come back. All right, so here's what I've got on that clear part that I made for the front bridge area there. Let me focus this just a little bit. And you can see it's not completely clear. Now the reason for that is I've then gone and did what Anycubic recommends, and once you print this and wash it before you do the final cure on it, this part doesn't like to snap in place, you coat it with some more of the high clear resin, and I did that and it came really clear. Now the reason why this isn't very clear right now is because I've got to do some sanding to this. You can see probably there's some steps there from where I, Tinkercad only lets you get so much of a high resolution on parts when you make them, so that's the only drawback to using it. But so I'm gonna have to sand this to get these smooth, and once I do that, I will recoat this with Anycubic high clear and then final cure it, and I think it's going to come out pretty clear. It should look pretty good. Hopefully it'll work, because I don't want to have to go and cut up soda bottles to make glass panels for this. But I made it and it fits pretty good into place, if you can see that. And I don't know if you can see how well the light shines through it. But the studio model, really you couldn't hardly see through the windows, because I'm sure that you'd be able to see in there and see there's nobody actually in the bridge, if they even had a bridge, a miniature of the bridge in there. But this piece I made here just kind of pops into place, and obviously it'll be glued when I'm done with it and ready to put it into place. But this is what it looks like, and it turned out real nice. I've got some sections in here to where hopefully it'll come through these panels a little bit and won't look so set back from the frame. So I've got to do some more work on this. Like I said, I've got to sand this, give it a good sanding to smooth it out inside and out, and then I'll recoat it with Anycubic high clear, and hopefully that'll give me a nice clear finish to this, to where I can use this part. But I think that'll work. Just got to do some more work on it and some more testing. But other than that, I did also add some clear. Oh, my part fell out. There it is. I did recoat this with the high clear, this lens here, and it definitely helps. It's definitely a lot clearer now. I don't know if you'll be able to tell in the video, in the camera, because the camera washes it out so much. But in person, you can definitely see the individual LEDs when they blink, instead of it kind of all lighting up like it was doing before. So I think that's going to look a lot better, and that's going to work. So I'll have to do some more work on this, and I've got to get some more of those warm white SMDs in so I can do this corner strobe here, or well, corner blinking light. It's not really a strobe, but I got to get that done, and then I can look at installing my 3mm for the lights on the front. At least run the wiring for the cannons. I don't think I'm going to put the LEDs in, or I'll probably be using SMDs. I think they're red. I think they're red lasers that shoot out of there, so I'll be using red SMDs on those. But I'll at least run the wiring, that way I can seal the wing up and do some work on this. And I did want to mention too, I was scribing this curve in here for the not decal it, but to make a mask so I could paint this. This is the bottom of the wing, and then I realized when I printed these that the top of the wing already has that shape in there. So bonus, I don't have to do that now. It's ready to go. But so all I got to do is mask off this curve, and or paint it and then mask this off and then paint the rest of the wing. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. I gotta look at it yet, see how I want to do it. But it'll be one of those two steps. But happy with the progress so far. Everything's working out. I'm going to start looking at getting some coats of paint on this, and then we'll come back and also working on finishing sanding this down. I added some Bondo in some spots. I had quite a few spots where I had some deep gouges from sanding or some uneven areas. So once I sand that out, another 2 or 3 coats of primer and sanding in between, and this should be ready to go. It's a lot better than it was at the start of the video, that's for sure. So I'll keep working on that, and I think we're going to wrap this video up because it's getting kind of long. I think we're already over 30 minutes, and I usually like to try to keep these videos kind of around the 30-ish minute mark. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's what I aim for. So we'll go ahead and wrap this video up, come back next video, and we'll have some more stuff done and some more progress. But as always, I want to give a shout out to my sponsors, Cass over at Lake Monster Details, Gus over at GCals, and Gary over at Mask Design. As always, you can find the links for them and their products in the notes below this video. And I appreciate you if you would give them a visit and patronize their website, give them some business. And again, as always, I want to thank everybody for watching these videos because I've had quite a few new subscribers. And the comments are building, and I enjoy seeing people comment and talk about the things I'm working on, especially these obscure things like this, which a lot of people don't know about. It's just kind of fun to see people come in and talk about the Flash Gordon movie and share the same views and enjoyment for the movie that I do. But again, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button down below. It costs you nothing, but it helps me out tremendously. And again, thank you everybody for watching. Until next time, keep modeling.